Hey there everybody, it's Mark Crilley. I'm back with another How to Draw video. Today we're going to be drawing the video game character Sora from Kingdom Hearts. And what you see here are two perfect squares. Now people become very interested in what size they are. They are about 6 centimeters or a little under 2.5 inches on all sides. But as I always say, a perfect square, just make it any size you want and your drawing will end up very much like mine. Let's go ahead and add just two more horizontal lines here in the bottom square. Okay, so you can see we've kind of divided this into thirds with these two horizontal lines, although the middle third is maybe a tiny bit smaller. This line is going to show us where to put the eyes, and this line is going to show us the tip of the nose. I'm going to go ahead and refocus the camera so that we can see this in greater detail. Okay, well, my apologies. I forgot to put in this vertical line right between the two that's going to help us for placing the facial features. So you'll want to go ahead and get that, especially in the lower of the two squares. And now what I'm going to do is put up the time-lapse warning, because this video is going to have a lot of time-lapse. It's quite a complex character to draw, especially in terms of the hairstyle later on. Unavoidably, we're going to have a lot of time-lapse in this video. But let's go ahead and get the basic lines that show the shape of the face. Alright, so a lot of times I will actually draw the entire head of the character, but in this case I thought the hair is so dominant that I would just only draw the chin, basically the jaw down here, and leave it at that. Now the next thing to do is draw the eyes. As I said, this line here is going to help us place them, and you're going to see me put the eyes so that they rest right on top of that line. Let's go ahead and get those basic guidelines into place. Okay, well, I've got the basic guidelines of the eyes in place, and I'm going to do a little real-time drawing here to show you more of the details. One thing that I noticed as I was studying this character's eyes is that the upper eyelashes are quite full, quite thick. Almost what you might more expect to see with a female character, and the eyelashes are pointing down right here, but then there's a line of, I guess, more eyelash that comes off at a slightly different angle, and so it's almost like forked at the end. Forked eyelashes over on the one side. And there are indeed, eyelashes all along the lower eyelid, but not quite so thick and full. And interestingly, with this being a computer-animated character, you do see an indication of the tear duct, which is not so common with manga or anime, where they tend to just leave that up to the imagination. I'll go ahead and get in a line for the fold of the upper eyelid, fairly close to the upper eyelash itself, and as so often is the case, it just sort of trails off as it gets closer to the tear duct area. I'm going to go ahead and drop in the pupil. And one thing I noticed, this is getting kind of hyper detailed, but in some of these computer illustrations, I noticed a kind of a secondary line here within the iris that distinguished this character's eyes. Anyway, let's go ahead and I'll do all those other lines in time-lapse on the other eye. And of course I'll be further refining these eyes later on in the illustration process, but right now I want to draw the eyebrows, and as I put in these basic guidelines, I want you to pay close attention to the angle at which I draw these lines. Alright, so as you see, very sort of steeply diagonal the way these eyebrows are drawn, and interestingly, it doesn't result in an angry looking face. It's more of, I guess, a look of determination, although really in the final drawing you may find that he just sort of looks relaxed, even though he has these very steeply diagonal eyebrows. And of course they will end up sort of partially obscured by the spikes of hair. More on that later. The spikes of hair, much more. Trust me, it gets very complex when we get to that part of the drawing. Let's go ahead and put in the basic guidelines of the tip of the nose. All right, so one interesting thing about this is the nose is fairly modeled in comparison to some anime type characters where they greatly minimize the nose. I would say this nose is given a fair amount of prominence by comparison, but notice that the nostrils, there's very often a line that comes up around the nostrils. As I looked at these illustrations, that just didn't seem to exist. We were really focusing on the lower edge of the nose and not trying too much to get that area of the nostril in, although later on I'm going to do some shading that will indicate the actual shape of the nose itself. Well, we're almost done with the facial features. Let's go ahead and do the mouth. All right, well, I'm going to be doing a fair amount of modeling on the mouth when we get to the shading part of this illustration. But for now, you can sort of pay attention to, first of all, the location of the sort of mouth line in comparison to where the tip of the nose is. We had that horizontal line that showed us where to put that. It is actually considerably closer to that line than to this bottom line. So you want to get that in the right place. Notice that the lower lip, as is so often the case, we don't draw a line all the way across. It's really more the sort of shadow underneath the lip that helps define that area. And eventually we're going to have the ears in place, but I think maybe it's time for me to pull back and start drawing the hair. All right, well, now we come to the really tough part, and that is drawing all these spikes of hair. He has seriously spiky hair. The spikes are not placed randomly. This is a digitally created character, so it's very systematic, and each spike of hair comes from a certain place, points in a certain direction. Yes, they may move around in the wind and so forth, but there really is, I think, a particular design to where all these spikes go. I'm going to go ahead and put down some basic guidelines to get started. Okay, so this sort of, horseshoe-type shape here is going to help you place this initial group of 3 spikes of hair. I'm going to call them hair spikes, for lack of a better word. And what I'm going to do is begin to put one long spike of hair that comes all the way down in the middle and crosses in front of the one eye. Now, this is, I don't mean to say that every time you see this character, these spikes of hair are in precisely the exact same spot, but rather that they're sort of in the same general location. I do believe that when you create a digital character, there is, it's all based on a structure that really can be repeated again and again. And what I'm doing here is breaking this into 3 different spikes that are right in the front. And I feel like this is maybe as good as a place as anywhere to begin to give you this idea of these sort of clusters of spikes. Let us call them spike clusters. This is just the first of many. In fact, I sat down and counted the number of spikes that I saw in this hairstyle, and I came up with numbers like 27, 28, something like that make up this hairstyle. So unfortunately, there's no easy way around it. It just takes a lot of time to sit down and draw all of these spikes of hair. Of course, you may decide to just draw them any way you want to and put in a bunch of spikes all over the place. My approach is to try my best to pay tribute to the person who designed this character by taking it very seriously and trying to draw everything exactly where I saw it in the actual illustrations or screenshots that came from the game. Now you can see me adding another spike of hair here. There are 3 spikes that you're going to see right here in the middle. Again, I don't mean to say that they always look exactly like this, but if you study illustrations, hopefully you will find, as I did, that there is maybe surprising uniformity in terms of where these seemingly random spikes of hair tend to go, the direction they go in, the length that each spike of hair is. And so let this be a sort of, I'll be like the coach before the football game, giving you guys a pep talk. Now this character out there, he's got spikes of hair, but I want you to draw all of them. All of them, to hear me? I kind of frightened myself with that one, got a little out of control. But you almost have to give yourself a pep talk in a way to do a drawing like this because it's incredibly complex. And as I said, some of you may just sort of throw your hands up in the air and say, oh, I'll just draw a bunch of spikes. And, go ahead and do that. But if you're committed, as I am, to drawing this character accurately, you will want to take the time to try to draw each and every one of these spikes of hair. Well, I'm going to go ahead now and start putting in some guidelines that help us place the remaining spikes of hair. Okay, so very tricky to sort of simplify the arrangement of these spikes of hair, but I wanted to point out that there are two triangular-shaped areas that are pointing pretty much straight out horizontally, and I'm going to take this section and break it into three, much as I did that previous one, so that, erasing away a little bit here, you're going to see each one is composed of three almost like mountain-shaped spikes of hair. And though that seems pretty consistent, especially when you're looking from straight on, like as we are here, a straight ahead point of view, that you will always see these groups of three over here pointing out, as I said, sort of horizontally. Now, I think you can begin to understand that if I tried to use this approach for every single one of these spikes of hair, this would be the world's most boring video. So sadly, we're going to have to start simplifying things and not doing it real time, and maybe in a way just dropping in the full complexity of all these various spikes of hair, and hoping that you can hit that pause button if you're committed to following along with this. But notice this spike here. I guess this will be the last thing I talk about. This one up here is the longest spike of hair coming off to the upper left, and that height that you see there above this square, that's as tall as his hair gets, basically. And you can sort of use your measurement, using your eyes almost to measure the width. It's probably helpful to understand what is the extent of this hair. How big is it? Of course, it is quite large in proportion to his face, but there is a limit, and having this square up here can kind of help you to see that. Well, sadly, I'm going to have to go ahead and kick it into time-lapse and put in the basic guidelines for all the remaining spikes of hair, but maybe I can come back and point some of them out to you, give you some tips in terms of drawing them yourselves. All right, well, there you have it. The incredible spike fest that is Sora's hairstyle. As I said, it really is sort of the ultimate challenge in hairstyles, maybe to draw this accurately. I would point out that there are these sort of side spikes of hair going nearly vertically over here by the side of the head. And those will allow you, if you've got them in place, to figure out where to draw the ears. The bottom part of the ears is a little higher than that line for the nose, and his ears do sort of stick out to the sides quite a bit, although they are largely concealed by the hair spikes. So many hair spikes. Cruelly, will you please knock it off about the hair spikes already? But there are just a couple left, and then I promise we'll be done. I'm going to draw, looking at the pupils as guidelines, I'm going to come down here, and this is where the line of the neck is going to be, more or less. You can always keep looking at that central line there to, help figure out. It looks a little wide, maybe. Let's make it. His neck is fairly narrow, actually. So I'm going to go ahead and make an adjustment there on the fly. How do you like that, huh? So we go ahead and get his neck into place, and as I said, as I promised, just a few last spikes of hair that come behind the ear, and then we are done. Can you believe it, people? Done with these spikes? Well, no, not really, because we have to add shading to them. And you guessed it, time for Old Man Time-Lapse to come in and save my hide as I try my best to finish off this drawing without it taking several hours. to complete in real time, which is really what prevents a video like this from being mostly real time, the sheer complexity of it. But I do hope that I was able to point out some of the basic structures, like these 3 spikes here. If you get started, get those sort of, almost looks like Bozo the Clown kind of hair spikes that are heading out there. You can see there's sort of a 1, 2, 3 cluster up there. You know, little by little, maybe, if you're committed to learning how to draw this character, you can begin to commit to memory the structure of this hairstyle. But let's go ahead and pull out my trusty black Prismacolor. It is trusty. I've been using it for years now. And go ahead and do some final line work before we start adding the shading. Okay, well, I thought that while I was zoomed in here on the face, I would go ahead and do some of the shading. I'm using a Dixon Ticonderoga, fairly common graphite pencil, to start shading in the eyes here. He does have these crystal clear blue eyes, so you don't want the shading on the inside of the iris. You don't want that to go too dark. On the other hand, the more time you spend doing some subtle shading in here, the better the eyes will look. And as I said, there is, you see a faint sort of ring almost around the pupil there. And, you know, suffice to say, I will be shading the other eye much the same way. But I thought I could say a thing or two about the nose and the mouth. As I said, most of the shading is going here beneath the nose. And there's a fair amount of shading on either side to start to delineate the actual structure of the nose. But you can see I'm laying my pencil pretty low to the paper so as to really only touch the paper quite lightly, and with these sort of circular motions I'm able to gradually add in just a little bit of shading here on either side of the nose. That probably needs a little more refining later on. I mean, this whole shading process is, again, another thing, sadly, that has to be time-lapsed through, but I wanted to do at least a little bit of it real time. Especially this upper lip area here that is largely defined by way of shading. He's got a thin but noticeable upper lip. And so you want to go in there and get some shading, and maybe at the corners of the mouth as well. It's tricky, you know, when you're drawing a digitally created character. I ran into this when I was drawing Elsa from Frozen. If you missed that video, you can check it out over at my channel. But when you're drawing these digital creations, you're going up against, you know, very smooth, perfect-looking surfaces. And so you really have to, you know, step up your game, I guess, as an illustrator, to try to match that in terms of reproducing digital coloring by way of the pencil. And that probably is about as much as I can do real time. You're going to see me add a lot of shading. I'll go ahead and keep it zoomed in on the face, but then I'm going to pull out, maybe halt one last time to show you how I shade the hair, because that is a pretty big part of it. But let's go ahead and in time lapse, I'm going to finish adding shading to the face. Okay, well, I've finished up shading the face, and I brought back my trusty Prismacolor to add a little more darkness to some of these areas. That happens a lot for me when I add the shading, and then I find that I have to go back in and sort of beef up the darker areas to make sure that they still contrast with all that shading that I just added. Now what I'm going to do is refocus so as to show you how I'm going to add the shading in real time to just one of these hair spikes. Oh, the hair spikes. I just hope I never have to deal with them ever again after this one lesson. So I'm going to go ahead and choose one of them. You're going to see me shade it in all real time, and then you'll at least understand my process as I extend that shading technique onto all the other hair spikes. Okay, so the one that I've decided to do is this one right here, and I'm going to go in keeping my pencil very low to the ground and just get a good base layer of gray in place. I keep it low to the paper. That helps you get the sort of wide edge of the graphite and just get a sort of even tone going. And then, once I've got that in place, what I'm going to do is start to really darken things up back here where there's a lot of shadow. And as I do this, I'm changing the way I'm holding the pencil so as to get the point to create more visible line work. And so, when I'm drawing, when I'm shading, I'm sort of switching back and forth. When I want more of a general gray tone, I'll hold the pencil at a distance like this and sort of keep the graphite low to the page. When I want to get those lines to show up, sometimes I'll even really be, sort of perpendicular to the page to get just the very tip of the graphite to be touching. So that's something to keep in mind. And my goal with this one really is to get lots of individual hairs in place, because we are trying to imitate, computer graphics, where they're sort of famous for you seeing every individual hair, and that's part of the look and what makes these characters look so cool on your high-def screen. But one thing that I noticed was that sometimes we may want to erase away some of the tone to create little streaks, not so much of white, but sort of a lighter brown. I don't know, does he go to the salon to have his hair tinted? It makes me think of Wreck-It Ralph. Like all of these characters have this real-life stuff that they have to do after the game is over. Anyway, but you will find these streaks of white, not white really, but sort of a lighter gray, I suppose. And so sometimes I am actually erasing away a little bit. Anyway, that shows you my approach for adding the shading. Oh, I just wanted to say one last thing, that although these, I call these things spikes of hair, and they do sort of come to a point, I noticed that the computer graphics people were not actually having them come to absolute point. They sort of taper, and then you can see a number of hairs at the end, sort of like that. And so each one of these things is not really coming to an absolute needle-sharp point. It's more split ends, maybe. Got to go back to the hairs a lot. Anyway, enough of this. I'm going to go ahead and refocus so you can see the whole image, and then I'm going to add shading to all of the hair. Alright, well, there's my video on how to draw Sora from Kingdom Hearts. Some of you may have noticed that I pulled out the gouache to drop in highlights on his eyes, but otherwise this is just one of my traditional pencil drawings with the black Prismacolor and the Dixon Ticonderoga. Let me know what you thought of this video. Would you like me to do more of these video game characters? I had a lot of fun doing it, and I think there's all kinds of possibilities for things you can learn from doing, from following along with videos like this one. But for now, let me go ahead and thank anyone who has supported me by getting any of my books. We got Brody's Ghost Book 5 finally out, as well as Miki Falls, my other graphic novel series, and Mastering Manga and Mastering Manga 2. I really do greatly appreciate those of you who support me by picking up those books, but let's go ahead and lay down this pencil. I want to thank everyone for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll be back with another one real soon.